we're so fortunate that you're here today to share this beautiful collection of yours. I know the residents wanted to hear a little bit about
Sure.
yourself too, if you could tell us about
Yeah,
yourself.
sure.
Start. And thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. This is nothing to do with my professional life. I'm an attorney by day, and I'm on the faculty at Brandeis in legal studies, and nothing creative and fun like this. So this vintage jewelry collection is a hobby for me. My husband Vito, who is actually gonna tape this so I can put it up on YouTube. I can give a talk. We are members of Historic New England, and so very interested in New England history and history in general. And Vote says we have no children. All of my New England collection will eventually be donated to Historic New England for their archives. They have a very robust archive of New England made jewelry, which is what I'm going to talk about today. But we live in a 1926 house. We like to tour historic homes and historic collections, and I love to look at historic jewelry. Some beautiful collections actually in the Newark Museum, which no one ever thinks of going to. Rhode Island School of Design, Metropolitan Museum of Art. Our own MFA right now has a very beautiful starfish brooch that was made for the actress Colette Colbert. That's a highlight at the MFA right now, which was not New England made, but is now in a collection here. So I'll talk a little bit about the history of how it happened to come that New England became a center for New England for costume jewelry making, and how that spread, and kind of what's happening today, and some of the major makers, which these are the pieces that I have. I think almost everything I have here is signed, although many pieces got made for the national market by the big makers, but that are unsigned. So really, costume jewelry history is really a tale of two cities and a tale of two cultures. The biggest production and design of costume jewelry was centered in Providence, Rhode Island, and some of the cities in southern Massachusetts that are surrounding it, and New York City. And a tale of two cultures. Most of the designers, owners of the companies, manufacturers of the jewelry were either Italians or Jewish. So it's a tale of two cities and a tale of two cultures, and I'll tell you about the different makers and a little bit about their history. And there was a history of fine jewelry making in New England from colonial times, and actually quite large towards the end of the 19th century. And then it started around the time of World War I. Production of metalworks turned to wartime production. And so for World War I and the interwar years and through World War II, a lot of those, what were fine jewelry makers, started making other metal parts. Also became a time when there was a lot of clock and watch making, which in Massachusetts was centered in Waltham, Watch City, and in Connecticut was centered in Waterbury, where my husband is from, the second watch city, and still manufactures clocks and watches today. So the jewelry was a natural follow through from that. And one of the early makers in Attleboro, so just over the border with Rhode Island, and still being made today, is Balfour, which for those of you who graduated from high school or college, or your kids did, or if you were in a fraternity or a sorority in college, they were making and still make signet rings and fraternity pins, sorority pins, things like that. They're still in production, although in 1997, the production moved to Texas and Mexico. And that's very much, unfortunately, the history of that is it all starts to move out of here. Even though some of the companies still have headquarters here, might still do some of the design and the business here, the production has largely moved overseas. Swank, which made men's jewelry, tie clips and cufflinks and things like that. That was another Providence and Southern Massachusetts company. One of the biggest companies pre-war to start making costume jewelry was Whiting and Davis. And people largely know Whiting and Davis now because they made, and I unfortunately don't have any of them, but they made the mesh bags, handbags, gold looking handbags, and the little fine link handbags, which are very popular with Hollywood actresses today. Nicole Kidman had one, and the ladies from Sex and the City. But they made primarily bags, but eventually they started turning to some jewelry production. And I actually have all of these pieces here are Whiting and Davis. So in the 1930s is really when they started making jewelry. Elsa Schiaparelli, who was an Italian who started working in Paris, and then she came here to Massachusetts to start working for Whiting and Davis. One of her pieces was actually worn by Lady Gaga at President Biden's inauguration. She had a big, beautiful bird brooch. But this is, so they're not, it's all costume. So this is what we would call a demi-parure. So a full parure would be earrings, a coronet, a necklace, a bracelet, and a ring. These are demi-parures, they're part sets. So here is a bracelet with its matching ring. So all silver tone and a resin or a glass piece as the cameo. So imitating much more expensive real cameos that were made of shell and set in gold. And many, many different rings, which afterwards you can come up and see. So they did, this is a cameo with like a mother of pearl inset, and then just pieces that are glass made to look like gemstones, but they are just glass or they're rhinestones. And so Whiting and Davis started making all of these are not early these are probably from the 1950s, 1960s, kind of cocktail ring look. But that's what Whiting and Davis, after the success of their handbags, started to make jewelry. Actually, in the 1940s, they also made radar equipment for the war effort, but then really turned completely to the jewelry. And some, they also made clothing, kind of mesh-looking clothing, halter dresses, and things like that. So they made a lot of different things, but based in Plainville, Mass, and eventually moving production to Rhode Island. As late as 1986, there were still 900 different jewelry companies operating out of Providence. A lot of small companies that specialized in certain things, but then also, and they also made clocks and watches in Providence, but that all shifted to Waltham and to Waterbury. Now there is a jewelry district that the city of Providence has designated a historic area, the old mills and factories, and hopefully someday there'll be a museum, which we would like to see. There was a company in 1913 that also made metalworks. Now, unfortunately, this is some of the tragedy of collecting vintage jewelry is when things go missing. So this is a piece by a Providence company called Little Nemo. And at one time, this is kind of an Asian revival, Asian inspired piece. There would have been, I've researched it, in the middle, a glass piece that would have looked like a pagoda or some other Asian themed piece. So it's missing now, but now it's a blank slate. I can insert whatever I want inside of it, and some people would wear it just like this and it would just frame whatever you're wearing, but unfortunately it's my only Little Nemo piece and it is missing its center, but I can do something with it later on. Someday I'll have more Little Nemo. Little Nemo did a lot of Asian themed things, and this is probably from the 1930s or early 40s. They were trying to compete with the makers in Czechoslovakia who were making deco kinds of pieces. And so that was their attempt to make something like that. This is another, from another Attleboro company called Evans. Oh, actually, I'll pass this one around. Evans was an enamel maker, and they made a lot of copies of Fabergé eggs, trying to look like Russian fine jewelry.
Nice.
And they made trinket boxes, ashtrays, little Fabergé egg looking things. And they did make a small jewelry line out of probably scrap pieces of the enamel. And that bracelet is a Evans enamel piece. So there are two really big names in the Providence jewelry making, which I know you all know them because probably you've all owned at least one piece at some point. Trifari, which I will talk about, and Coro. And Coro is a hybrid name from its owners, its founders, Cohen and Reisenberg, so Coro. They were in operation from 1900 until 1979. They started in New York, but in 1911 they moved their factory to Providence. They always maintained offices in both places. Coro became the official name in 1943, and I have quite a few Coro pieces. This one, I'll pass this one around as well. This is from a very popular line that Coro did called Wedding Cake, because if you see kind of this way, there's always like a top. Some of them are very, very tall. They're kind of made to look like wedding cakes. They did them in all different colors. They made earrings and bracelets and mostly necklaces and pendants. So that is a Coro wedding cake piece. During the war effort, they also started experimenting with plastics, and they came out with something called Thermoset. I don't know all the science behind it, but Thermoset is a thermoplastic. It's a very high heat plastic, so it makes very nicely into jewelry because it gets hard, almost like glass. And this is a Coro Thermoset necklace. They made earrings and bracelets and everything out of Thermoset. And Coro also made they're all costumes. Sometimes they had some pieces that were gold filled. These are typical when ladies were not getting their ears pierced. These are screwback earrings that I'm not successful at converting into pierced, but somebody could, or somebody would still wear them. Coro did lots of things just in a gold tone. So simple without other pieces, but I'll leave these all up front. You can see later Coro brooches. And Coro also did a lot of figurals, which are very popular. This one is a lizard inset with rhinestones. Cute. And this one is actually very unusual for Coro. This is a cat. With AB Aurora Borealis, which is a coating that they made on the rhinestones to make it iridescent. And this is called Japan. When jewelry has like a black backing, which was a style that they did in Japan, they made American jewelry in this Japan style. So this Coro cat, which was unusual to be set like this in a black backing, has its eyes and all of its trims made out of this Aurora Borealis iridescent coated rhinestone. So this is sadly it's missing one. This is the unfortunate thing. So I need to go on a hunt for an Aurora Borealis bead that is the right size to replace the one that is missing. So that's kind of fun, the figural pieces from Coro. So they stopped, and this, which is the only piece that was in my mom's collection that is now mine, is actually a sterling piece with rhinestones. So during World War II, when metal use wanted to be saved for the war effort, actually Coro and Trifari and some of the other costume makers did start making fine jewelry again, mostly sterling. And so this actually happens to be a sterling Coro piece. So I can date it to right around the time of the war, because it's really the only time that Coro was making anything in fine jewelry in sterling. So that's fun, a rare piece. Oh, and so I think someone asked, where do I get all of this jewelry? And that's a good question. So my mom and I, I'm not ashamed to admit it, have always been rummage sale, yard sale shoppers. And that is really the best place to procure it. So I go to a lot of church sales. Those are the best place to find without an outrageous price. So I will tell you a little bit about the pricing of costume jewelry. It was designed for every lady to be able to afford it. And a lot of it is very, very inexpensive to this day. You can buy it on eBay, on Etsy. You can buy it in antique shops all over the place. And it's still very, very affordable. But there are certain makers and certain lines and certain styles and certain designers for sure that are very collectible. And there are costume pieces that can cost as much as a fine jewelry piece. I don't have those, but there are some makers, which I'll tell you a little bit when I talk about Trifari, about one in particular. But this actually is from another Attleboro company called J.H. Peckham. So they did make things, this is in an Art Deco style, and this was made in the 1930s during the Deco period. It's all costume, though it might have a plating. It might have a rhodium plating, which is a semi-precious metal, or it might be silver plated, but it is costume, and it's not real gemstones. It is glass, it is rhinestone, but it was made for ladies who wanted to have, who couldn't afford platinum and amethyst or sapphire or whatever it was. It was made in that style. So to look. And this is something that I picked up at a church. And this is what happens to me personally. A lot of dealers do go to these sales and they're looking for gold and silver. They're not looking for costume. So I kind of can swoop in and pick up the costume pieces for myself. So that's a good thing. Although this, being a costume piece, is certainly worth more than a contemporary sterling silver piece that would be made now in China or in Thailand, just because of its provenance and because it was made by a very good designer here in New England. So that's where I pick up. I do occasionally buy things at antique shops, depending on the price and kind of who the dealer is. And so I will give you an example. I'll talk about Napier and then I'll tell you about what I'm wearing. Napier was a company that started in North Attleboro, Mass. in the 1880s. And then at the turn of the century, they moved their production to Meriden, Connecticut, because they were focusing their production on watches. And they wanted to be near Waterbury Watch Center. And then they just started making jewelry on top and as well. So actually this is a Napier piece, I'm sorry. So this is Napier, and so is what I am wearing, which is, I've tried to research it to try and date it. I think it's from the 50s. I've never found another piece quite like it, but it's certainly made to be an imitation of Peking glass, which had been used a lot in jewelry in Europe in the 1930s. And so it is glass pieces. So this is a demi-parure, a necklace and bracelet set. I don't believe that there were ever earrings made to match it. And I'm almost certain that there was never a ring, and Napier didn't make a lot of rings. So this is a set that I picked up actually in Rhode Island at an antique shop in Pawtucket from a dealer who doesn't really do jewelry. So he specializes in other things. I've bought a few things from him before, and he just wants to get rid of the jewelry. And this is the strategy. Also, I do go to a couple of flea markets in Connecticut and one up on the North Shore in Rowley, Todd Farm. The key is to find the dealers who aren't really interested in jewelry and buy jewelry from them because they've done an estate closeout and they just want to get rid of the jewelry and they don't care. And I paid, I think, $10 for this set.
Oh my God.
$10,
It's
yeah.
so beautiful.
Thank you.
So exquisite.
So, I mean, to give you an idea of value, it is a piece that if I wanted to sell it, which I do not, I would probably put it at auction somewhere. If one of the auction houses was doing a high-end costume jewelry sale, and I would expect to get probably $300 to $500 for it. Because of the style, because of a butterfly, figurals tend to command a bigger price because there'll be a butterfly aficionado, a cat person, a dog person, whatever it is. Figurals tend to go for a higher price. And because it's a Peking glass imitator, which is another very collectible thing, and because it's very unusual. So I'm not going to sell it, but that is kind of what I would expect to get. And I got it for $10 because the person selling it just was not interested in jewelry at all. And so I got it at a good price. It's always the first booth I go to if we go to Pawtucket and we go to that shop, because I know if he's done a closeout and there's jewelry there, he doesn't care and he just wants to get rid of it at a cheap price. So Napier made a lot of jewelry under license to Disney. So they made Mickey Mouse, not the watches, but they did make brooches and earrings and things for Disney under license. And they were one of the early makers to start using Swarovski crystals as their rhinestone pieces. And Marilyn Monroe was on the cover of Movieland magazine wearing some Napier necklace. And Napier was owned by Mamie Eisenhower, the Duchess of Windsor, who was known for her fine jewelry. Doris Day, a lot of Hollywood folks sometimes would turn to costume things as well. And it was thanks to First Lady Mamie Eisenhower, who also owned Napier, that we owe a lot of the boom in the 1950s in costume jewelry to, because Mamie dared to wear Trifari for Ike's inauguration, his first inauguration, in her Mamie pink gown and her Trifari Whiting and Davis handbag and Trifari jewelry, not fine jewelry, nothing on loan from Cartier or anyone like that. Mamie wore Trifari. And if Mamie wore Trifari, all the ladies in America wanted to wear Trifari. And so they became probably the biggest maker. And it was founded by Trifari and Trifari, an uncle and a nephew who came from Naples, Italy, which is the biggest jewelry making center in Italy, fine jewelry. They came in 1883, and in 1904 they opened up started production in the United States and founded Trifari and Trifari in 1910. And a lot of Trifari's prominence came after hiring a designer named Alfred Philippe. He was their lead designer from 1930 until 1968. He is the one who designed the pieces that Mamie wore for her inauguration, which are, by the way, in the Smithsonian, in the First Lady's collection there. And it really changed the taste of American women towards costume jewelry. And Philippe was one of the first people to import the Swarovski crystals from Austria and to use those. Unfortunately, I do not own any Alfred Philippe designed pieces. They're very, very collectible, and that's when I say there are Alfred Philippe costume pieces that go for thousands, mostly figurals, a poodle or a snake or whatever it happens to be. Those are the pieces that people seem to really like. But I have a lot of pieces of Trifari. I did do figurals. This is actually somewhat atypical for Trifari. I'll pass this around because this is a mid-century, an owl. This is something that you would see more from Monet, who actually merged with Trifari, purchased Trifari later. But it's more of a mid-century piece with a lucite plastic, an owl. This is very 60s and 70s looking, but this is the kind of thing Avon and Monet and some of these other makers made pieces like this. So it's a little bit atypical for them. They did mostly things that were meant to look like real jewelry, real gold, but their costume, they did do kind of a blend of figurals. It's a Trifari brooch, but its center is a bug made out of rhinestones. It's a ladybug, ladybugs are a very popular theme in jewelry. And the very classic circle pin, which was a big thing in the 40s and 50s. Very preppy. It was in the preppy handbook. Every preppy lady would have a circle pin. And brooches with this, just a cabochon made to look like jade, but it isn't jade. It's just a green glass. And sort of semi-figural things. Trifari did a lot of grapes. You know, they were Italian, so they figured a lot of grape motifs. This is faux pearls, lots of faux pearls in their brooches. Trifari did a lot of brooches. And sort of Victorian revival types of pieces, these bracelets, you can come up later and see one is a faux pearl, one is a faux sapphire, that is rhinestones, of course. And mid-century, very sort of abstract geometric shapes. This is probably like 1960s clamper bracelet Trifari, made to look like gold, but in those geometric shapes that were very popular in the 1970s. And my, probably the most collectible Trifari piece that I have, which has now made an indent into my arm, is this bracelet. It's a starfish bracelet, and it was a parure. I have the earrings, but they are not, I haven't converted them to pierced, so I don't wear them because they're still clips. And there is a necklace. I wish I had the necklace, because if I had the whole set, it's probably worth about $700, but I'm missing the necklace. I only have the bracelet, which I bought at a yard sale in Winthrop for $2 a few years ago, but it's beautiful, and I will convert the earrings. One of the hard things for collectors who also like to wear the jewelry, which I don't see the point in collecting it if I'm not going to wear it. I'm never going to wear clip earrings or screwback earrings. I need to convert them. So I'll keep all of the components, but I'll convert them to pierced eventually. And in 1975, Hallmark bought Trifari, and then Monet bought the Hallmark line, and then Liz Claiborne bought it. So it kept changing hands, and then Liz Claiborne moved all of its production to Puerto Rico. And stuff is still made under the Trifari and the Monet labels, but it's all made overseas. The only Monet piece I brought today, which I don't know if anyone recognizes these they became very popular in the late 1970s, were charm necklaces. You know, charm bracelets had been so popular, but then in the 1970s, Monet thought, how else can we capitalize on charms? Let's make this little charm holder so it kind of unhooks and you can put as many charms as you want on it. I used to have mine like loaded with charms, as many as I could possibly fit. And so Monet made charms for their charm bracelets, but you can stick any charm on them. So those were very popular and perhaps making a comeback a little bit. So those are the major makers. Oh, and then Goldent. So when I said there's a tale of two cities, like Napier, which operated in New York and in Connecticut, my favorite of the New England makers is a company called Goldent. Does anyone remember having Goldent? It's very popular in the 50s, and their focus really was Victorian revival. So they started to make costume pieces, and this is a very, very classic. This is a necklace I wear a lot. This is a very classic Victorian revival Goldent piece, which is a classical scene in glass. This is an intaglio. So the opposite of a cameo, whereas a cameo has the figure on the outside, the intaglios have the pieces on the inside. It's recessed into glass. This is a Cupid and Psyche. So Greek mythology and Victorian themes and things like that. goldette, because it's not gold, it's goldette, so imitation gold. And they had a lot of styles like this. This is another. This is somewhat unusual for goldette in that it's a single strand piece. They liked to make things in multiple strands. This is more typical. It's a smaller intaglio with what we would call an Etruscan revival piece. So like a heavy set, kind of a Roman looking ring or another kind of a piece, but set in these multi-strands. And goldette this one is signed, but they had this very, very typical butterfly kind of clasp. So a lot of times you'll find they made pieces for department stores or small shops to sell, but not under the goldette name. Just like this one is not signed, but I know it's made by Goldette because it's a goldette clasp. It's very much a goldette style. It's just not signed goldette. So if you look at the two pieces side by side, you see the very similar, probably made around the same time. It just enabled Goldette to make things for other buyers and not, not have their name on it. And so these are other, same, this one is also not signed, but I know it's Goldette because it's their color that they used, it's their style, and it's definitely their clasp. And one of my favorite, which is not that typical for Goldette, but kind of also a little bit Etruscan style, heavy, but more of a modernist shape, not this Victorian revival. This is from the 60s, so made to be more of a modern piece, modern as it was at that time. And this one is one where I did convert the earrings. They were screw back earrings. I had to cut the tops off, and I just put a ring, and I was able to put wires in them so that I can wear them. So I can wear them pierced. So there's that. Another sort of a classic one of I'll never know for sure who made this, but this is another kind of an intaglio piece. It's a head, kind of a Roman looking head. This isn't signed, but my guess is that it's a company called Emmons who used to do home jewelry parties like Sarah Coventry did or like Avon did. They made home ones for like a home party. And oh, I know which one I forgot to show. When I was showing Coro, I forgot to show you this is a maker called Vendome. Vendome is a line of Coro, and it tended to be their a little bit higher end pieces. These are also this Aurora Borealis AB coating on the clear beads to make them iridescent. And Vendome did lots of double-stranded necklaces, double-stranded bracelets, and earrings with the AB stones. That's very classic style of Vendome, is using the Aurora Borealis. And the other Coro piece that I didn't show. Does anyone remember having a Coro duet brooch? These are some of the most collectible pieces from Coro. Not this one in particular because this is kind of one of their cheaper lines, but the duets, they're called duet because they serve dual purpose. You can wear it all intact like this as one brooch, or you can also, so it's got a pin back, if you see here, like a straight pin back, the typical thing that you would use for a brooch. But you can actually separate the two pieces like this, and you can wear them as a fur clip because they have the little spikes as a fur clip. You can wear them as a dress clip if you wanted to dress up a kind of boring dress and put clips on the straps. You can put them in your hat because it's got the spikes for that. So these were very popular because you could wear them multiple ways and then they go back together if you want to wear them as a single brooch. I know that this is not a high-end duet piece because it is a heavier metal. They call pot metal, kind of left over from the war effort, these heavy metals. So it's not as refined, not making so much of an attempt to look like it's silver as some of the other pieces. So it's that heavy, what's called pot metal. And also because the rhinestones are what we call glue set. So rhinestones can be prong set. So like fine jewelry with prongs around the rhinestones to hold them in place, or glue set, which is this. It's just glued on. And like all glue set pieces, there are rhinestones missing from this one. And so it was cheaper, faster for them to make it, cheaper for you to buy it. Unfortunately, they have a tendency to lose their rhinestones, which this one has done. But that's something you can see. Even Koro, which this would have been a slightly more expensive piece because it was Japan and used the AB beads, it's still glue set, which is why one has been lost. So it would have been a little bit cheaper production and therefore cheaper to buy. So that is my collection
Very nice.
of New England. Thank you. Did anyone have any questions about any of it?
I want to know what's
Yes.
in your hair. You have
Oh,
something beautiful
yes.
in your hair.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's
Look
just,
at
it's
that.
a costume piece, a comb. It's probably from the 50s or 60s with I don't know who made it because it's not signed, but my guess is that this was a production piece that never made it into a brooch. And so they had all these findings, tried to figure out what to do with them and thought, oh, let's glue it onto a comb. And thank you. So I thought it kind of matched the gold. Oh, and I know, one more thing I was gonna show. So as everyone developed a taste for costume, some people thought, well, maybe I'd like to make my own costume jewelry. And a thing that became popular in the 60s and 70s is enamel on copper. And so like even boys were making it if they were taking a metal shop in school, maybe bring it home to their mom or their sister if she was nice. I don't know whether this was professionally made or this was amateur made, but there is a lot of enamel on copper jewelry that was made as a hobby by hobbyists, like a jewelry making class or at a metal shop in a classroom. And this, I don't know why I have two of them. That's how I bought them. Is the ring. It's all enamel on copper piece, unsigned. Sometimes the amateur makers would sign their own piece as well. These are very inexpensive to buy, and there are a lot of them because it was a very, very popular hobby. Now, and there are some makers that you think you know who the maker is just by the look of it. So this piece, just called a slider bracelet, if you can kind of see as I turn it, the little pieces slide around. They're on some chains and then they slide back and forth. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, this is Florenza, which if I come back and do a talk about the New York makers, I would talk about Florenza. Florenza did a lot of Victorian revival. So from a distance, I see this and I'm like, oh, I would say 90% chance that this is Florenza. But it isn't. It's Goldette. So Goldette did do Victorian revival, but using these little like faux pearl, these kind of pieces is not super typical of Goldette. It looks more Florenza, so I was fooled. I collect Goldette, so I was happy to have it, but I really would have thought this is more typical. This is a Goldette bracelet. This is much more typical of Goldette. A little bit more simple. And this is kind of part of their St. Patrick's line. Hello. These are little shamrocks and green stones for the Boston market, for sure, for the Irish American market. Kind of something that would have been marketed by them around St. Patrick's Day. So. Any other questions?
My mother was a pin person. I think
Yes.
one of the Trafaris.
Yeah.
She had a lot of them. I don't know where they are now. I think my daughter has her collection. You know, I'd love to go through it, and
Yeah.
I got my watch from high school in 1962, beautiful watch,
Yeah,
you
do
know.
you think that was a Waltham made watch? Could've
Probably,
been,
oh,
yeah.
probably,
Yeah.
you know, Waltham, you know, or, you know, but she had, there's that one piece there that looks very
Oh,
familiar.
Maybe
No,
something
not
like
that
this,
one, the other one in front with a flare.
this
No,
one,
in the very front over here. Next
This-
to
oh,
the,
this one.
next to the wedding cake. See it
Oh,
over
this
there? Yeah,
piece, yes,
that
this
there.
wheat
Yeah,
piece, yeah.
I know she had that piece, I know she did, you
yeah,
know?
these
But
were
I'm
very
sure,
popular
I'm
styles.
sure my daughter has all of those pieces now.
Yeah, they did lots and lots and lots of brooches. I will tell you one
She
thing.
was a brooch person and an earring,
Yeah,
person.
brooches were really, really
but she
huge.
didn't have pierced earrings, she had the ones that, you know,
The,
clamped.
the clamps,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
and that's a way that you can sort of, a lot of times, you can date the jewelry is by the backing. I didn't bring I do have one pair of clip earrings. These were Coro that I said were the screwbacks. These were a little bit earlier.
Yeah, she
And-
always had the,
And then there were these, the clips. The clip earrings, when
she had beautiful earrings, but they were the clip.
they made beautiful, this is a company called Bow Jewels. This is also an Aurora Borealis coloring, coating on the pins. So I actually asked the jewelry curator at Historic New England, what is it that made pierced earrings go out of style? Because if you see very old jewelry from New England or owned by women in New England, Victorian era and earlier, their ears were pierced. And then sometime in the early 1900s, pierced ears became a thing that you just didn't do. The nice ladies didn't do. And
Ladies.
I never really found the true history of it, but I do believe it is because of the immigrants coming over from Southern Europe.
My
and Eastern
grandmother
Europe.
had pierced earrings.
Yes. And that's what I think it is. I think that
She did.
immigrants came and,
You know, she had the gold pierced earring,
yep, and a lot of American-born ladies decided
and
that
she wore
they
that
were-
pair forever, that she wasn't one to go, you know.
They
too
were
old.
beautiful, but I
Yeah.
think that American-born women saw immigrant women coming in with pierced ears and decided that they weren't going to have pierced ears.
Pierced earrings, right.
Yes, and so you
Exactly.
find a lot of clips and screwbacks from a certain era, really until like the late 60s when people started piercing their ears again. And then we see pierced earrings come back, and they are the frenemy of the jewelry collector with pierced ears like me, because I'm never gonna wear these. So these, if I really felt like it, I could break off the screw piece and I could file down the back and I could glue a post and make these. Actually, the earrings that I'm wearing now, it's hard to see with my mask, but these were screwback earrings. I cut the screw mechanisms off and I glued a post to the back to make them
Yeah, sure.
pierced. But they don't always work. It kind of depends on the size of them. What I have done sometimes, which I did with this pair of clips, without damaging the clip mechanism, is I can clip them onto a necklace, and then I can sort of wear. They're hard because the gravity is not your friend when you're attempting to do a piece like this, but you can get it to sit right on you. You can kind of get it to work, but it's tough with the clips. The clips are much harder to convert than the screws, just because of their construction. And I don't like to wear a big cluster kind of an earring. I like a hanging earring, so they're hard to convert to that way. But the many attempts of collectors to do something with the clips and the screws that are so beautiful, but so hard to wear.
Very nice.
I wanted to ask, so it seems like, New England is just a small part of the costume jewelry that you collect.
Yes.
Where else do you collect, what other types of, or places do you collect, vintage jewelry from, what areas?
So I have the New York makers, which are most of the other important American makers are New York based. There was production in California, like people who were designing for the movies, for example, like Nolan Miller, who became really popular in the 80s because Aaron Spelling liked him and used him on Dynasty and some of his other TV shows. So there were some California makers. Chicago, I would love to collect it, but they're fine jewelry. Chicago was a center for arts and crafts era fine jewelry making at the turn of the century, but that's all gold and silver, and it's very collectible and very, very expensive now. So I would like to collect it, but I don't. But what I do have are Czech pieces that were made in Czechoslovakia pre-war, Art Deco looking, that are costume. Also very collectible now. Big rhinestones, Victorian revival looking pieces. I love those. And I do have I have a lot of Italian glass jewelry, Murano, and some Damascene, which was made in Spain and then later in Japan, that has real gold but just as a tiny overlay. So it was made for the masses, so it was very affordable. So I kind of collect anything that is pretty. But
Yeah, hey.
yes,
You
but
have beautiful taste.
but I do like the American makers, and I like the Czech makers a lot. It's funny because like the UK, for example, that had such a big tradition of arts and crafts, decorative items, silver things, bowls, and other decorative pieces, never really had a huge jewelry production. There is some, but not. I think they just bought imports from Czechoslovakia, and that's actually the best place to buy it is in the UK. It seems to be a little underappreciated, whereas here there's a scarcity of it, and so it drives the price up.
I have to say, I never knew, and I don't know if the rest of you knew, that there was so much costume jewelry production in Massachusetts. I had no idea. Did you know? Did you guys know?
Massachusetts?
Yeah,
Yes.
Really?
yeah, it was it's that area, that border area with
With Rhode Island.
with Rhode Island.
You were talking, yeah,
Attleboro.
Rhode Island,
Yeah, Attleboro, mostly in Attleboro, and actually,
I used to go to Attleboro all the time, we had relatives out there. If I only knew.
yeah, there was a lot. So I said this piece,
Yeah, that
Evans,
piece
which
was
was
nice. I
the
like that.
Attleboro maker, and that they mostly made, as I said, the sort of Fabergé egg knockoffs and other enamel pieces. We actually had bought at an auction a number of Evans enamel pieces that one collector had obviously gone crazy and bought pretty much everything that they made. And they did a lot of customized pieces to give as promotions. You know, like now we all get stress balls or t-shirts or pencils or whatever with the name of some vendor. Evans made nice promo pieces for different manufacturers. So we had a lighter that what was that one in particular?
Chicago, the world,
So-
the Wonderful Traveler radio show.
Oh, there was a
from
radio
50
show
or
in
54.
Chicago, maybe like the 40s or 50s, and we happened to pick up an Evans enamel lighter and decided to sell it on eBay, and a guy who runs the Historic Society Museum in Attleboro purchased it for the collection of the museum, and then I said, well, we have another one and we're happy to donate it. So somewhere in Attleboro is a little plaque with our names on it that we donated another lighter to their collection. But it's all a very important part of the industrial history of New England. Sort of out of the war effort came the jewelry production, and I think that the jewelry industry in Providence was one of the second biggest employer in Rhode Island at the time until all of that moved.
Well, I wish my mother was alive so I could ask her because she had a lot of pieces.
Yeah, a lot of Trifari probably.
A lot of Trifari.
Yeah.
But I'd like to know if she bought it here or in Rhode Island, because we did go to Rhode Island, because we had relatives there.
Yeah, and I
So-
think they shipped it all over the country, so
Oh,
it
I'm
could have
sure.
been bought there,
Whatever.
it could have been bought.
But
We've
she
actually,
was more of a pin person and earring. I never saw her with necklaces and stuff like that. That was a little too ornate for her.
and we've
so-
seen Trifari pieces in Europe for sale, and it's funny because of course it commands a bigger price there than it does here, because it's not as abundant. Here you find Trifari everywhere,
No,
but
I'd like to know if my daughter has some of those pieces, that's the.
Yeah,
She's
we-
got
we-
everything, mine, my watch from the sixties, when I graduated high school, everything.
So it's
My
fun.
class ring, what about
Yeah.
class rings, do they?
So that Balfour and, oh my gosh, I forgot the other name. Balfour, they still make them actually.
They do,
It's
well, they
still-
have to, yeah.
Yeah, they do. And you can buy, what did I say? Oh, and Spidell.
I don't know
Remember
which mine
Spidell
came,
that had
I
the-
graduated in 62, so.
Yeah, no, they started making them in the 1910s.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And still make them.
My brother has one,
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah, Balfour and I can't remember the name of the other company, but they still make them, the Greek jewelry and the school rings and all of that,
Oh.
still in production.
I kept all these things in this little
It's fun.
case. I
Yeah.
gotta,
And, yeah, fun pieces,
Fun
and they
stuff.
turn that production around. At Swank, that was the other one, Swank, which made
Swank.
lots of the men's jewelry, they did make a small production line of the class rings and the Greek jewelry
because
and all
those
of
are so
that.
popular.
And Spidell.
Everybody.
So I forgot. I don't have
Yes,
any-
Spidell, yeah.
I don't have Spidell, but if you remember, they used to have a commercials like
Oh,
in the
yeah.
1970s, the Twistoflex. That was an invention so that you wouldn't have to have your watch bands sized. They
They stretch.
Twistoflex, Spidell's Twistoflex, and so yeah, Spidell was also based in Rhode
A
Island
big guy, yeah.
as
I
well.
remember the name of Spidell.
And hand by hand with, because they had the watch manufacturers to the north up here in Waltham and to the south in Connecticut, so they started to make the parts for the
Yeah, I
watch
was just at
companies,
the
so-
Waltham place, but we were at a
Watch
restaurant there.
Yes, Watch City is,
Yeah,
yes, it's the old
Yeah, have
factory.
you been there? It was so good.
Yeah. They've turned and that's what they're trying to do now in Providence, is turn some of these old factories into lofts
Yes,
and
yes, lofts
office
and-
buildings
yeah,
and
yeah.
things like that, because there's that rich industrial history and beautiful architecture.
Oh my
I hate to
gosh,
see it
yeah,
gone,
and-
So,
Whoever took it over did a great job.
yeah, they did a nice job. So, I welcome you all to come up and take a look if you like, or if you have any other questions. And, you know, if you enjoyed the talk, I'm happy to come back and talk about the New York, I know we're not gonna talk about the Yankees, but I'll talk about New York jewelry
No, don't talk
makers.
about the
So,
Yankees.
Yeah.
Some of the other pieces, yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
This was
welcome.
Thank you,
wonderful.
yes, that was very nice.
What a treat.
Thank you all for coming,
I
so.
enjoyed it very much.